Hello and welcome to this week's episode of DIY History. My name is Cassidy Cash, and this is the place to explore games, recipes, and crafts from the life of William Shakespeare. So if you enjoy the past and getting to try out some of it on your own, then hit that like and subscribe button because we're here every Saturday. Though not mentioned in Shakespeare's plays that I could find, one ingredient from his lifetime that Shakespeare definitely would have known about is called verjuice. It's a very acidic liquid ingredient made from grapes. And today I'm going to share with you some history of verjuice and show you how you can make it yourself at home. That's what's new right here on DIY History. When grapes are growing in difficult climates, and a lot of times European climates can be, depending on where you're at growing the grapes, winemakers will do what's called thinning their grapes. And that means they go through and cut out the bunches of green grapes that are ripening slower than the other grapes. And that way, the nutrients of the vine itself can focus on the more mature grapes. But then when you do that, you end up with a bunch of green grapes and you've got to do something with them. And that's where verjuice comes in. The word itself is from the French, and the word vert means green, and the word jus means juice. In English, it's often spelled verjuice, which is an amalgamation of languages there, but it still means green juice. Most often it's made from grapes, but it can also be made from crab apples or any other sour fruit. In fact, there are a lot of places you can use verjuice, and anywhere it substitutes for like a citrus fruit. If, for example, if your recipe calls for like oranges or lemons, verjuice would work there. Now, during Shakespeare's lifetime and from cookbooks of the period, you will see verjuice added for a flavor in a variety of dishes. I've seen verjuice show up for making of pumpkin pie even. So it's just that little almost umami type flavor, just that little something that it needs for it to taste good. Now, I did find a recipe from 1615 where they use verjuice to make pottage. Now, pottage was a mainstay dish for the working class in Shakespeare's lifetime, and it's a lot like a pot roast or a stew, but with tons of vegetables. And interestingly, it's a ton of really bland tasting vegetables. In Shakespeare's lifetime, they were skeptical of the safety of eating raw vegetables. So whenever they ate them, they cooked them, and they almost overcooked them because they would cook them for a really long time and they just cooked the mess out of these vegetables. So they ended up very soft and even mushy, which is why pottage, which has oatmeal in it, was a decent vehicle for the vegetables. And I think if I show you the recipe for pottage from 1615, you'll understand why they felt they needed to add a little bit of acidity to the taste. In the cookbook, The English Housewife from 1615, Gervase Markham outlines how to cook pottage, and he says, "If you will make pottage of the best and daintiest kind, you shall take mutton, veal, or kid," that would be lamb, cow, or goat, "and having broke the bones but not cut the flesh in pieces and washed it, put it into a pot with fair water. After it's ready to boil and is thoroughly scummed," which means to take all the stuff off the top, "you shall put it in a good handful or two of small oatmeal, and then take whole lettuce of the best and most inward leaves, whole spinach, whole endive, whole succory, and whole leaves of cauliflower, or the inward parts of white cabbage, with 2 or 3 sliced onions, and put it all into a pot and boil them well together till the meat be enough, and the herbs so soft as may be, and stir them up well together, and then season it with salt and as much verjuice as will only turn the taste of the pottage, and so serve them up, covering the meat with the whole herbs and adorning the dish with sippets." Now, sippets, if you're curious, are just small pieces of bread that you can dip into the pottage. It's a lot like serving soup with sliced bread. So the pottage was really like just a thick soup or stew, and you would dip bread into it. And as you can see from this recipe, pottage was bland, vegetable heavy. I mean, a whole thing of cauliflower. Whew, it's like having just all of your bland vegetables all in one place. So it definitely needed that salt and that verjuice to make it taste good. In exploring verjuice, I'm actually reminded of how we cook turnip greens here in the American South. So I'm located in the US in Alabama, and one common dish you're going to find around here all the time is cooked turnip greens. And they cook them in a similar fashion. You put them in a large pot with fair water, a meat of your choice, and then you cook it at a low simmer for just hours and hours and hours. And when you get it out to eat it, the expectation is that you're going to add salt and you're going to cover it in something called pepper sauce. Now, if you've never had pepper sauce, it's a very similar ingredient to verjuice. It's this acidic liquid made from hot peppers that you put on your vegetables. And in fact, when I made this connection in researching verjuice, Wikipedia actually says that verjuice is used here in the American South. Now, I was born and raised here, and I've never heard of verjuice until I was researching it for this episode. And I've grown up on pepper sauce, though, and we put that on almost everything. So I think it would be fair to say that there's a relationship between pepper sauce and verjuice in terms of the flavor. And if you were making pottage and you wanted to try out Markham's recipe, you could definitely put some pepper sauce there instead of the verjuice, and it would be a fair comparison. The taste of verjuice is very similar to lemon juice or vinegar. So when you're cooking, you can actually substitute lemon juice, vinegar, or even apple cider vinegar if you don't have a bottle of verjuice handy. Today, verjuice is most strongly associated with Turkish food or Middle Eastern food. So if you wanted to find a bottle of pre-made verjuice that you could buy at a store, an international food store would be the best place to check to get a pre-made one. But since this is DIY history and we're all about making it ourselves, it's not hard to make. It just requires a mess ton of grapes to make your own. You'll need about 12 pounds of green grapes to make 2 to 3 quarts of verjuice. Now, fortunately, here in the US, grapes grow wild around here, so you can actually get some free grapes if you look around and find some. Just be really careful that you know what you're doing when you're picking wild grapes and get some that are safe for people. The alternative there, to be a little bit safer and still get some green grapes, would be to check at a local vineyard. Winemakers will cull the green grapes from their vines at certain intervals, and you could probably buy some from a vineyard for that purpose. Ever how you get them. Once you have your grapes, you do want to wash them and get off any leaves or dirt or unwanted bugs that decided to hitch a ride on your grapes. Now, once they're all clean, you put them in a clean bucket or container large enough to function like a huge mortar and pestle. You can even use a large bowl and you can smush them up with the bottom of a mason jar. You don't have to remove the stems or anything. You're just trying to get the juice out of the green grapes. So you're just smushing them up, and it's not hard. It's not scientific. It's just smushing. However, you do want to work quickly because once you start smushing them, they will quickly lose their color. So to capture that green color that puts the ver in verjuice, you do want to kind of work fast. Now, the next part is with gloves on your hands so that you're not picking up the juice with your hands. Now, it's not gonna sear your hands or anything. It's just a good idea to wear gloves. Now, you're going to strain the mixture and separate the juice from everything else. You can pour it through a sieve or you can use a cheesecloth here. You just want to separate out so you have clear juice by itself. And once you've strained the juice off, you put the juice into a mason jar and voila, now you have a bottle of verjuice. Now, this will keep in the fridge for 2 to 3 months and you can just get it out and cook with it. Now, there are some ways to extend the life of your verjuice by adding different preservatives that I was able to find in some recipes online, but I prefer not to add anything to my food if I don't have to. So, you might just consider your verjuice a seasonal item that you make when the grapes are available. That's it for this week. Thank you for being here. I'm Cassidy Cash, and I hope you learned something new about the Bard. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.